Hello, welcome to another Wise Guys tutoring video. And in this one we're going to continue our series on the BA2 Plus calculator, and we're going to look at the compound interest, and we're just going to talk some theory about when to use compound interest. Now, when it comes time to knowing when to use compound interest, you'll see one of these words somewhere in the question. So we've got annual, semi-annual, quarterly, and monthly. So when you see these words in the question and the interest is compounded based on annual, semi-annual, quarterly, or monthly, that's when we know we are using compound interest. So now what does each one of these words mean? Well, annual, once a year, or one. Semi, we're looking at twice a year, so 2. And then quarterly, we're looking at 4 times a year. So 4. And monthly, we're looking at once a month, or 12 times in a year. Okay, so then these are our words for compound interest: annual, semi-annual, quarterly, and monthly. And of course, annual is once a year, semi-annual is twice a year, quarterly is 4 times a year, and monthly is 12 times in a year. So then, when we realize that we are going to be using compound interest, then we can take our calculators out and we will be using this light gray row of buttons here, the third one down. And so now we're just going to talk about each one of the buttons and explain how each one of them works. So the first button we have here is the N, and our N stands for the number of payments. Now this could be the number of payments we receive, this could be the number of payments we have to make. N is just going to stand for the number of payments. And to calculate N, what we should do is we should take the years and multiply it by the PY. PY stands for payments per year, and we'll talk a little bit more about payments per year in a minute, but that's how we should calculate N, is to multiply years times the PY. If the question uses months, then you should divide the months by 12 to change it to a yearly amount, and then multiply it times the PY. So if the question uses months, just go months given and divide by 12, and then multiply it by the PY. Okay. So the next button is our IY. IY is our interest rate for the year. And so then the interest rate, well, that will just be our percent. So whatever percent they give you, that will be our IY. And when it comes time to putting it into the calculator, don't change it to a decimal. The calculator understands that you're referring to it as an interest rate, and so you just want to type it in as stated in the question. So as an example, if the question uses 8.7%, just use the 8.7% and don't change it to a decimal. The middle button is our PV, present value. And our present value just means this is today's dollars. So how much money do we have right now? Next button up is our PMT, and that button stands for payment. And when we refer to payments, the payments have to be something that keeps occurring on a regular basis. So if we just bring back the words of compound interest again, the 4 words were annual, semi-annual, quarterly, and monthly. So if the payment takes place once a year, annual, twice a year, semi-annual, 4 times a year, quarterly, or 12 times a year, monthly, then we know that that's going to be a payment. So the payment has to be a consistent payment that takes place on a regular basis. Finally, the last button here is our FV, and that's our future value. So then the future value is just how much the money will be worth in future dollars. So this is what the money will be worth in future dollars. Okay, so then there's our 5 buttons. So the first one we have is N, and that stands for the number of payments. To calculate N, you're going to multiply years times the PY. If you're given months instead, then make sure to divide months by 12 before multiplying it by the PY. The second button is our interest rate for the year, and that's always the percentage in the question. And so then if they give you 8.7%, do not change this to a decimal, just leave it as 8.7 and type it into the button that way. The next one up is our present value, PV, and that's just our today's dollars, so how much do we have right now? Then we have the PMT, which is our payment, and this has to be a consistent payment. If the question just says we make a single payment today, even though it has the word payment in it, it's just a single payment, and so it's more likely to be a present value than an actual payment, because a payment has to be consistent. It has to take place once a period, and for the once a period, again, it refers back to these compound interest words that we talked about, annual, semi-annual, quarterly, or monthly. So as long as the payment takes place once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year, or 12 times a year, then it would be a payment. But if it just happens once, then it's more than likely going to be present value. And then the last one here is future value, and the future value is how much we're going to have in the future, so it's future dollars. Okay, so those are the 5 buttons on our row calculators. Now there's one other function we have to use, and that's the second function IY. So the second function button and then the IY button. So let's just turn the calculator on and give you an example of second function IY. So this is our second button here, so the yellow and then IY, so second function IY. First thing that comes up is PY, and this stands for payments per year. So how often do we make the payments? And the most common ones that we use are the annual, semi-annual, quarterly, and monthly. So then if we have payments in the question, this is how you're going to set the PY. It's either going to be annual, semi-annual, quarterly, or monthly. Then if we push the down arrow from the PY, we go to the CY, and the CY is our compounding periods per year. How often do we receive our interest rate? So that's what the CY stands for, is how often do we receive our interest rate? And again, the interest rate will be referred to back to one of the 4 that we were talking about earlier. The interest rate will either be annual, once a year, semi-annual, twice a year, quarterly, 4 times a year, or monthly, 12 times in a year. Now, in future videos, we will look at some questions and answers. So we will show you how to put the numbers into the calculator so that you can calculate what you need to calculate. For this video, we just wanted you to understand the functions of the calculator. So I'm just going to refer you, if you need some help, we can be contacted through RRC, mb.ca/LAC. This is our main website. And as I said, if you want to try some actual questions, we have another video for present value, future value calculations, payment calculations. There's just a whole bunch of videos that you can watch. So if you want to watch one of those, have fun, and then have yourself a good day.